G'day everyone, here we are again with SUPERCOACH TRAGICS podcast. This is our second time round. Hopefully we can be a bit better. Tonight on our cast we have Brod, we have Dan, we have Laurie and we have Chris. How are we going, Brod?
Yeah, good mate. Pumped to be on.
And how do you think your Broncos are going to go this year, mate?
Look, we'll scrape that 8th spot. Obviously A-Ray will be the deciding factor. We lose him and we'll be back down the bottom fighting with the cows. So,
okay, no worries. And Dano, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Good to get the invite back. So,
yeah, good. Yeah, and what about the Panthers, mate? How are they going to go this season?
I don't see him going as back to back. I'd love to say that, but I reckon I feel confident saying they'll be in top 3. But I feel as though there might be a bit of digression there. So, but yeah, still fingers crossed. So, I reckon we can still put a fight up, which is great.
Yeah, they've lost a bit of depth, but they've still got the nucleus of that side and that spine. So I think, they should be at least up there. How you going, Laurie?
Good, mate. Yourself, Glen?
Yeah, good, mate. And what about your bunnies, mate? How are they going to go?
Yeah, I quietly confident again. I think I go right every year. They go really well. Adam Reynolds is a big hole to fill. It's sad to see him go, and he's going to the Broncos, so I'll cheer for him, as I was his junior league coach for many years, from under 12s and under 19s. So, but they'd be strangely not there in the red and green. But this young Lockie Elias, he comes in with a great 4-pack there already. He'll have Cook and Walker and Latrell there, so it won't be too tough for him. He's got some talent, so yeah, we'll have to wait and see what he's got properly. We've seen a glimpse of him last year, but not much. But yeah, club hold high hopes of him. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'll be interested.
We also yeah. So it's like any of the top teams, we just need a bit of luck of injuries. So if you can keep that luck of injuries, you're at chance.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I'll be interested to see when we get to the halves to talk a bit about Elias. And Chris, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, good, mate. Just glad that the footy has come around again. It's been getting a bit dull, so we've actually got some footy on this weekend, which is pretty amazing. On Saturday night, we've got the Indigenous All-Stars game, so it's going to be interesting because there's actually going to be probably 3/4 of the Sharks' spine on the go for the Indigenous side, so it'll be good to see how Nico Hines and co gel together in that team. So yeah, it'll be a good watch because Nico Hines is currently in my team, so pretty excited.
Yeah, I like Hines. And so you're a Broncos supporter too, mate, and how do you think the Broncos are going to go?
Mate, yeah, I'm quietly confident. I'm not sure of the top 8, but I know we won't go less than 10th, in my opinion, because I think we've had a lot of young talent for a long time, but just no one's been there to unlock it. And now we've got the key. We've got Adam Reynolds, so if he can do his job, then it'll unlock all of our talented players. So I'm got high hopes for this season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it myself. All right, guys, so what we're doing tonight is we're going to go through the hookers and we're going to go through the front rows. How we're going to do that is we're going to go from club to club. We're going to give you who the front rowers are and who the hookers are, bench players. And obviously we're not going to dissect every single player because, so we're just going to dissect the ones that are SUPERCOACH relevant. Before I do that, I'll just read out a couple of things. So one, I just want to give a shout out to a few other pages, which is like 360, who have been helping us a bit and we've done a bit of writing for. A few other comps like the Turbo Having comp that's running the comp out there. I got into the seeded league in the number ones, and I've also managed to somehow in the draft get the first pick. So Turbo will be my pick. And some bit of news today also, Johnny Raper. So, a lot of us fans who have been watching the game as long as I have, 55 years, he's a legend in the game. And so I just want to pass my condolences on to them and all the rugby league people out there. Some news on Sean Blair. He's been injured again. So that's a bit of sadness for us Tigers. And the last thing I wanted to cover is I wanted to quickly, before we discuss the props and hookers, was tell our players out there some of the steps that I take before I select a player to what makes them SUPERCOACH relevant to me. So I'll just read this and then we'll get on to the hookers and the front rows. So one thing I look for is the minutes on the field. So how many minutes a player is actually going to be on the field and the points per minute that they get whilst on the field, which is really important when we're selecting our players. Second one, obviously, is value. So we look at their money and their points per dollar. So, for example, a player that's, say, 400K that's scoring 60 points and a player 750K scoring 10 or 15 points more, you're obviously going to pick the value pick. My third way of looking is I look at the buy rounds, guys, and I look to see who's playing those first buys. And if I'm stuck between two players, then I'll sway to the one that's going to play in that first buy round. The fourth one is obviously genuine gun. So sometimes there's a player that just stands out so much, and I'll go to Cleary here. If you've got Cleary starting in the comp, the distance between him at halfback and the next one down is just so big that you just literally got to jump on those kind of players. The two others that I have is, and this is a big one for me, is the club that they play for. And that depends on position. With a forward, I might be more inclined to go for a club that's not as high ceiling because they might defend more in the middle and therefore their base stats are a little bit higher. And obviously the last one is I look at their base stats, depending again on position and where they play. So we're going to go into the Dogs first, guys. And Dan, if you can tell us the Dogs hookers and front rowers, please.
Yeah, mate. So I've got down here. I've got Jeremy Marshall-King to start at number 9. I believe Luke Thompson pretty much names himself at the front row, and I think Paul Vaughan jags the other spot. I think with the bench there, I believe Beyond Odo will get the bench spot to back up JMK, and I think they're going to ease Fatala Mariner in off the bench. So I think he'll be at one of the bench spots, and then I believe that we got Corey Waddell and Sui Manafanai on the bench. And that's what I've got at the moment. Trying to think here, really relevant players. I don't think JMK is actually relevant. He has had a score above 70, I think, once. So I think I'm going to skip over that. What I will say, though, is if he does fail, which I believe he probably won't be doing the good team justice with the new recruits, they won't do him very much justice. I believe that they've got a great number 9 in waiting there in Josh Cook, basement player, basement price, sorry, and he is a gun. I've had a look at some of his highlights. He's like slightly taller, similar style to Damien Cook with that speed out dummy half. He's bloody tough, dives over the line, and he's got 3 forwards on him, and he gets his levers out and still manages to get the ball down. He's and for his age as well, he's quite composed. He reminded me of like a Matty Burton. When Matty Burton first came on the field, he was like this rookie that no one's ever heard of, and he had this composure that was beyond his years. So I believe someone to watch out for is Josh Cook.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely stay away from JMK. The front row there, Luke Thompson, we saw what he did last year. I think he did quite a good job there. I personally am going to stay away from him this year. The dual position is pretty handy. However, I don't like that Paul Vaughan is moved over to the Dogs now. I think there's some minutes to be lost. I don't think Luke Thompson will like it very much because he loves that. He's a very much of a footy head, and he might want those extra minutes, but I think it's not up to him. And Paul Vaughan is actually an interesting one. I believe he has had gun status in the past, where he knows how to find a try line, and this kind of faded away a little bit. However, at 482, if he gets the minutes, he can actually come back up. It'd be a bit of good value there, I reckon. And with the bench that I have, there's actually not as many middle forwards on there as I thought there would be. So I think Vaughan might actually get a few more minutes. What do you think, Glenn?
Oh, that's interesting. I think you've left one out, mate, that a lot of us have got to remember that also Tavita Pangai Jr., although playing through the second row, is available in the front row. So I think that he's super coach relevant for sure. With Vaughan and Thompson, I like both them as players. PPM for Vaughan's very good. I'll be interested to see what others are thinking. Laurie, what do you think about those players? Any of those?
Yeah, all 3. They're the only ones you would look at in the front row from the Dogs. But yeah, he's a drill. I think he'd be very popular. I think his percentage at the moment is pretty high in teams. That's Tavita Pangai Jr. He's in my team at the moment because he gives that flexibility where with COVID injuries, I can bring him up, bring him down. And yes, he's in top 3 picks for sure in the front row this year. Tavanga Pangai Jr. Yeah, so, but yeah.
I wrote earlier about things to look for in your side. I'll post them up on the page later because one of the things I did add into that was dual player position. I think that any player that's available at second row and plays at front row, who plays in the second row, especially if playing 80 minutes. The one I really think that stands out for me is Tavita Pangai Jr. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think Luke Thompson is a really great player. I think you wouldn't go wrong if you selected him in your front row. Unfortunately, there's a few other options that are probably a little bit cheaper that you could go with and really save some money there. So you could possibly even get a Cleary or a Tom Trbojevic into your side. So, yeah, front row forwards, I think, is a position where I'm going to attempt to try and save some money and just run with some guys that I think have a fairly high ceiling, but don't cost as much on the hip pocket. So, yeah, that's my view anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely one strategy I think a few coaches will adopt is trying to save money through the front row. It's a kind of it's not a ceiling side position really, so it's one that you can afford to slack on if you really want to bolster elsewhere. What about you, Brod? Anywhere in there that you see in the Dogs you like that you'll start in your Supercoach team?
Well, where's my favourite from last year? Hetherington, hey? What a great pick that was. But again, it's TBJ. I talked down Luke Thompson last year. Talked to mate into getting him, and I had to quickly pretty much jump on him a couple of weeks in because the guy's a freak. But yeah, it'll be a wait and watch with Thompson and Vaughan. But yeah, I'll be on TBJ as well. So.
Yeah, I would definitely like to be the Pangai Jr. And I think they're good words from Dan on Vaughan and Thompson. Anything else you wanted to add on the Dogs, Dan?
Yeah, just the one thing, because I got TPJ in my team as well. One little tactic I like to use is I like to have the security of base as well as have the option of ceiling. And right now, I got Payne Haas with the base, and I have that option with TPJ as the ceiling. So I love having that combination. That way, if you just choose base, you're going to get average scores. If you just choose ceiling, you're going to get those bad scores. Having that combination right, and I reckon that's the best, perfect front row, really. Maybe not to start with, if you can't afford and you want to boost up elsewhere. But definitely the end goal, I reckon, is to get that base and high ceiling at the same time. Yeah,
that's actually excellent advice, Dan. I think that a lot of us look at the base, especially when we're talking around forwards, and then it comes down to that ceiling. And I think the the Bulldogs side has improved a lot this side, although the spine still looks a little sketchy. I think that those sides that struggle, though, tend to have a forward more game, play a lot more in the forward. So those stats tend to lift a lot more in the forward position. All right, so we're going to go to the Cows, and we're going to you now, Chris. If you can give us a bit of info on the Cows and the Hookers and the front row.
Yeah, no worries. So the Cows, I've actually got them coming last this season. So I probably would avoid going to them in relation to attacking players, although sometimes that doesn't matter. But yeah, definitely would put the avoid signal on for them in relation to their centres and wingers and fullbacks, etc. But so I'll kick it off with the Hookers. So the first guy of note that I'll kick off with is Rhys Robson. So in 2021, he averaged 54 across 24 games at 63 minutes per game, and he had a PPM of 0.86. Minutes were a bit weird. They sort of went from 48 to 80. So yeah, that's Todd Payton for you. So my verdict on him is I sort of feel like Robson could be anything if he wasn't coached by Payton. He's an attacking hooker in the same mould as the Cheese. If he was in a team like Manly, Broncos, Titans, he could be anything. So, unfortunately, he's got Granville on the bench, and he's got Cotter that could move from the bench to 13 to hooker. So his minutes are always going to be probably in and around, 48 to 80 minutes, which is what he did last year. So I don't see a huge amount of upside there. They do have a relatively friendly opening draw, but I'd probably be going somewhere else for a hooker, me personally, and I think 474 is a bit too awkward of a price to pay.
Yeah. And what about the front rows, mate?
I've actually got one more guy in hooker to go for. Oh, yeah. So we've got Reuben Cotter. So in 2021, he averaged about 48 across 6 games at at around, what do we got? 1.07 ppm. So minutes range from about 27 to 60 in those six games. So it's a bit all over the place. Again, Peyton. There's a fair bit of hype around him, which I don't really understand because it's a really small sample size to go from. I guess if he were to get 60 plus minutes somehow, although in order to do that, he would have to dethrone one of the best 13s of the last decade in Tamalolo, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. So, yeah, if he does, he's one of those guys where you just wait and see, and I definitely wouldn't recommend starting with him and a Randall combination because there's just nowhere to go. Like there's too much money to go up to a guy like Cook or Grant, and there's really nothing around that period. So my advice would be to watch him, see how he goes, start with a Grant or a Cook, and if he is getting 80 minutes a game, you can always go down and put that money elsewhere. So you've got a couple of rounds to have a look at him, so you might as well. Other than that, I'll go through the front rowers. There isn't much, but I'm gonna put a little controversial one up there for you. He's not actually front row at the moment, but Jason Taumalolo sure is at a good price at around 485. So in 2021, he averaged about 55 across 15 games at 59 minutes per game at about 0.94 ppm, which is a bit down for him. And minutes were around 44 to 80. I actually still have faith in him. A lot of people in the SC community have lost faith, which is understandable. But last year he did go through a really bad patch of injuries, and injuries that really affected his ability to offload and to palm off defenders. So I sort of understand why his scores have gone down. But it's no fluke that he went 70 plus across 3 seasons. So just be aware that is probably not going to go away, and it may come back at some point this year. So don't sleep on him. And now with the new Supercoach policy, they're going to be doing these mid-season dual position additions. So if he starts in the front row and Cotter does end up at 13, look out for Taumalolo to become a front row forward eligible. So he'll be a really good guy to have in the front row, especially if he can, wind back time and get back to that form. And you won't want to miss out on him in the front row.
Especially with Lolo. I mean, if Lolo goes to front row, that means Cotter starts at 13, and a 13 that's available at 9 suddenly becomes very attractive at his price range.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously with Cotter, be careful.
Yeah.
There is another guy. Just thought I'd go through him first. So Tom Gilbert, he's a dual front row, second row guy. He's about 363K. In reserve grade and Harold Matthews and stuff like that, he was a really good player, massive workhorse, sort of guy that gets through about 50 to 60 tackles a game, will have like 20 to 30 runs a game. He's a very good player. Obviously hasn't got much of a go because he's averaged about 41 across 11 games, averaging about 43 minutes a game. But his PPM is just under 1 at 0.96. But yeah, so until you see like an abundance of injuries there, I probably wouldn't go near him because Todd Payton's minutes are nothing to trust in. The rest of the guys really aren't SC relevant. You're going to have guys like Hess and McLean and Burr. Burr used to be SC relevant, but yeah, he's probably not going to get the minutes. So yeah, that's pretty much the cows.
All right, so I'll just quickly go round to the boys and just check that if anyone else has anything to say on the Cowboys. So Laurie, anything from the Cowboys spike your interest, mate?
I did have Lolo in my team at the beginning. He's out at the moment, but he's on my watch list. I'll see how they're going to use him in the trial a bit. Young Cotter, he looks like an exceptional young player.
Yeah.
The only thing that deters me from him is his time on the ground. He seems to get injured a fair bit, which they're the kind of players you're trying to avoid in Supercoach for the limited trades we have. They're the only two. I do like that. Is it Nane, the young second row, 18-year-old? He looks like a real good one. There's talk that he may start in round 1. So he's only about 330K. So one to keep eye out for our super coaches.
Yeah, when
Sorry,
we
go.
do second rowers, I've actually covered him quite a bit. We'll get to him.
Yeah, I think at the moment he's only 3% ownership last I looked. So if he does get that start position, he will skyrocket ownership for sure.
Okay. And what about you, Brod? Anything from the Cowboys that you're interested in, the 9 or the front row?
Nothing about the Cowboys at all. What am I interested in?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting though with Cotter, if he does get that 13 spot, he'll become interesting to me just based on point value. I mean, he'll make money and revenue's the key early. What about you, Dano?
Yeah, I think Lolo is definitely on the watch list. He was one of those guys that I guess I've been bitten, so I want to make sure I watch him first. Like you said, I get a few looks at him anyway, so it's good. And with Reuben Cotter, I don't see me putting him in the hooker role if he does do 80. What I'll probably more than likely do is maybe upgrade or downgrade one of my reserve second rowers and throw him in there because he's dual second row as well. So Cotter is also on the watch list. I'll definitely be having a look at him.
So the one plus I will give about Cowboys is that they do play the first bye round. So if you're looking for players, I think Lolo is one that spikes interest for that reason as well. And I think he is unders. He had a couple of injuries last season, but when we get to second rowers and locks, we'll get a bit more into the Lolo conversation, I guess. All right, Brod, it's up to you, mate. Broncos.
Where do I start, So obviously we get to watch them. So they're on Saturday at 4:00. They're a reserve grade team, so all the fringe players. So it'd be good to see what combinations that Kevy uses on that day. So there's rumours that Billy Walters is fighting it out for 6 jersey, and you can get him at hooker. So would you buy him at hooker if he's playing 6? Probably not. But obviously he's at a pretty good price. Turpin I wouldn't go through because he's going to be sharing minutes with either Walters or Hetherington off the bench. And his attacking play is just not there at all. And with the front row, it's only Haas that I'd touch. Obviously there's a lot of good young ones off the bench, but I'd want to see what minutes they're getting before I start jumping on them.
Yeah, well, Flegler comes back in round 4 too, doesn't he? Flegler?
Yeah.
He comes round 4. And what about Carrigan? Is he available through the front row, bro?
No, I think he's only second row this year.
Okay, yep.
So.
All right, so that's interesting. Anyone else? I'll go to you, Dan. Anything on the Broncos that you like, mate, apart from Haas?
No, not so much in the besides Haas, obviously, not so much in the front row, but I think the ARA effect might actually help some of the front rowers. He's got that pretty good little sneaky ball out there, and he's very on point with his ball. So I do I know he's second row, but Carrigan as well. There's potential that he could, I reckon, get a go at front row and like Lolo maybe get moved up as well. But that's just all hearsay, I guess.
Yeah. All right, that's interesting. What about you, Laurie? Anything from the Broncos that you like in the front row or the hooker role?
Front row, same as everybody else. Haas is a lock in most teams. I do like Corey Pax. I think he's dual. I think he's hooker half. I've been watching this Saturday night. I believe the Broncos play, and I believe he's been doing really well in the preseason. So he wouldn't surprise me if he comes up and he's the current hooker of the Broncos at the moment. Number 9. Turpin. Yeah, I think he'll put pressure. I think this bloke will put pressure on him. He's a great attacking game, great running game, and if he can pick his defence up, he's one to watch. Put your black book, guys.
Okay. What about you, Chris? You're another Broncos fan. So anything you see there you like in the 9 or the front row?
Yeah, obviously Payne Haas. He's probably your number 1 forward at the moment. Apart from him, probably not much really. Turpin doesn't really. He's at an awkward price, and Corey Pye probably doesn't get much of a go this year. But I don't think there's much else really. That's it.
I will say I do like the idea of Walters starting at 5'8". I really like the pack this year for the Broncos. I like them all over the park. I still think they're a little bit light in the spine part of their side. But I mean, with Campbell coming, A-Ray into the side, if Walters was to get that position, what I do like about him is the fact that he's dual player, you know, and so that you could have him at your second 5'8", and through the bye round in the second bye when the Broncos play, move him up into that hooker position. So that is one option that people could look at, I suppose. All right, so we're going to move to the Tigers, and sadly, that's my club. And they used to be good ones, believe me. I know most of you young people haven't seen it, but I remember the days when they were. So I went through first the hookers, which was Jacob Little, who he's at 480k. He averaged 54.9 last season from 20 matches. He averaged only 65 minutes, but I still don't like enough from the Tigers. The Tigers don't offer enough in attack for me. In that, I'm not enticed by either. The other one's Jake Simkins at 322, averaged 36.8, and he played 9 matches last season. But I do like Simkin. If Simkin was to get a starting position and played 80 minutes, I would be all over him. His point per minute is 0.86, and Little's I, for some reason, haven't written down. But some of the stats around Simkin I liked, which was he averages in Supercoach points, so 23.9 tackles a game, hit-ups over 8 metres, 3.8 metres, and tackle bust 2. And you've got to remember that's in an average of only playing 36 minutes a game. So if he was to get more minutes, and if he was to get onto Supercoach stats and have a look at the scoring he did points per minute wise to the minutes he played on the field, his output was actually really good. In the front row department, so I have this guy on my side, which I think many people will. He's owned at 24%. That's Stefano Utakoamananu. I don't know how you say that, but he's the big fella from the Tigers. So last season, he averaged 52 and he averaged only 45 minutes. He's got a starting role this season, and I think that his minutes on the field this season should lift quite considerably. His PPM is at 1.16, which I think's good. He's also, I won't go through all his stats here, but I'll put them up on our page later for people to read. But he's a workhorse, and points per dollar I think is really good value. The only other two that I've really written down are Twall. I like Twall because he's dual player position. He's not playing in the front row. He'll probably play at lock, and he's only averaging 59 minutes on the field. One of the most interesting things about Twall, and most of us that play Supercoach will know this, he's an absolute beast when it comes to work. I mean, his PPM is 0.92, and that's basically all in base. His attack stats are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. No offloads, no try assists, no line breaks, nothing. And so if he was to get a couple of those into his stats, he would make money really quickly and score well for you. And the only other one that I've mentioned here, which is Joe Offengale, that Tamu's a wreck for me. And if I was the coach, he wouldn't even start in that side. He averages 41 minutes. I think that if Offengale was to start or Twall in the front row with Stefano, I think both of them, to me, show some interest. So they're not a very super coach friendly side. So I'll just go around and see if anyone else sees anything they like there, and then we'll move on. Rod, anything from the Tigers you'd touch, mate?
The same as you. I like Simkins if he went and started. I thought he'd get the starting gig last year and just never got there. And then Stefano's in my team for sure. So just an absolute beast. Yeah, him and Huss. That's my team.
Yeah, I've got TPJ and Stefano at the moment. I actually don't have Haas, but I'm quite stacked in the second row position. But you know that could be revisited. What about you, Dan? Anything from the Tigers you touch for Supercoach, mate?
Yeah, I do like Stefano. I've got him in my team as well. But yeah, I think the one that people like Little is actually very injury prone. So I never want to wish anything upon anyone, obviously. But if he does go down, Simkins gets a lot of minutes, and he's definitely under the radar. So something to watch out for sure.
Yeah, if Simkins gets the minutes, I'll be all over Simkins. He's got a lot of super coach. He's very super coach friendly. What about you, Laurie? Anything from the Tigers you like, mate?
No, pretty much same with you guys as well. Stefano is in my team as well. He picks himself, 457k. It's a no-brainer. Simkins, I remember last year I was watching him in his highlights in the Queensland Cup, and I initially away he's a great talent. He just his minutes. He's only 20, I believe, 20 years of age. So another pre-season under his belt. If he gets opportunity and he's number 9, yeah, definitely one to watch. But I'd rather have him if there's no Liddell on the bench. But yeah, definitely a watch card for sure.
Okay, nice. And what about you, Chris? Anyone from the Tigers you've got in your side, mate?
No, unfortunately, I've got 0 Tigers in my side. I don't even have Stefano at the moment. So I found a couple other front rowers that I like a bit more. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for me on the Tigers.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, it's been pretty much like that for me since 2005. Really since the 80s. All right, guys. So we'll move on to the next side, which is the Titans. Oh, no, sorry. I apologise. I'm too far down the page. It's Dragons, and that's you, Laurie.
Okay, the Mighty Dragons. Give me a sec. Okay, yeah, so front row and hookers. Okay, front row I have as a starting for round 1. I think Aaron Woods will be one of the front rowers. He's at 393k. His average last year was 44.8. He averages about now. He's going about 50 minutes a game at the moment, maybe a little bit less now. The other prop will have Blake Laurie. He's at 418k. He plays around the 50-minute mark. And the hookers, Andrew Mcculloch, he's always around the 70, 75 minutes. Some games he plays 80, a fair few as well. His average last year was 51.4. As for the bench, I think Moses Mobile actually covers Mcculloch if he goes down or if he needs a rebreather. Yes, Francis Marlowe, he's 357k. He averaged 40.1 last year, which is down from his previous year, was 48.6. I think George Burgess, if he gets through the trials all right now, he could be some value at 247k. I know it's a lot of coaches are picking him. Josh Kirk played a bit last year. You know, he's a bit over to me, 409k. He averaged 46.7. Jack DeBellin, now, it depends where they're going to play him, is a big question mark because there's talk he might play up front, which will allow someone like a Jack Bird to come in and play at lock. But that's yet to be seen. So at the moment, I'll leave JDB as a lock at the moment. But yeah, that's about it.
The only two there. Oh, sorry, what are you going to say, Laurie?
Yeah, you got he's the second row. It's Daniel Alvaro. I think he's played the Eels. He's still there. But he hasn't played his best football for a couple of seasons now. So he'd have to really turn it around. So, yeah. But he's only 293k for anybody that's wishing to take a punt on him. But that's about it, I think.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of love for anyone from the Dragons in any position, to be fair. But the three that you did mention, so one was George Burgess. I know that he's in a lot of sides. A lot of people have got them as their backup front rower. So I'd be interested to see what sort of minutes people are expecting him to play. Andrew Mcculloch has been a Supercoach staple in some sides for years, but he just doesn't have that same output that he had years ago when base was more important and ceiling seems to have come more into the game. So we're looking for those sort of upside hookers. And but the one I do like there, if he got more minutes, is Laurie. He has got a Supercoach friendly game. He just doesn't seem to get those minutes for me. So I'll go to you, Bright. Is there anyone from the Dragons that you're touching in Supercoach this season, mate?
No, none of those positions. Haven't dealt deep. I just don't see much love for the Dragons this year. So
fair enough. And what about you, Dan? Anyone from the Dragons that you see in front row or hooker that you're interested in for this season?
No, not really. I don't think I'll be jumping on any of them for Classic. However, I think there's a bit of value there in draft. You might get a couple of late picks there. That could be like Mcculloch, for example, because hooker is a bit of a tight position to fill. Yeah, I reckon you can get him pretty late, reasonably late, and actually, he'll be one that you down. He will tackle all game and probably get you 40, 45, 50 points a game. So, but yeah, definitely not for Classic.
Yeah, it's not for Classic for me. Then what about you, Chris? Anything from the Dragons in 9 or front row you like?
I just think maybe George Burgess, if he cracks it into that bench role and maybe gets about 30 minutes a game, could be worth a little bit extra. But I'm just going to wait till TLT to see if someone better comes up.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's right. I think he's a placeholder for a lot of players, a lot of teams. And just coming back to you, Laurie, before we go on to the next one, was there anything you wanted to add on the Dragons?
Yeah, so I won't be looking at any of those Dragon players in those positions. Maybe elsewhere, but we'll get on that later down the track. But yeah, not those positions, no.
Okay. All right. So sticking with the policy of forwards, we're up to the Raiders, Dan. I know how much you love talking about this club after our discussion earlier. So I'll get you to read out the nines and the front rowers for the Raiders, mate.
Yeah, not only was it a real pain in the butt, but it was also the 91 grand final and stuff. So I got some hatred to the Raiders. Just so I live in Canberra, so this is quite awkward. So at 9, this might start a bit of controversy, but I think they're going to start with Starling. I think with Hodgson buggering off next year, I think that Starling is their future, and I think he's a gun. I don't think he has the minutes at the start of the season just yet, but if he gets a lot of good minutes, I think Starling at 343,000 is definitely a watch. If he starts getting more minutes, keep an eye on that and grab him because we've seen what he can do. I'll definitely be looking at that. The front row, I really don't like. There's a lot of Supercoach friendly players I've discovered in the front row. However, there's not enough minutes to go around. There's too many good players. So I got Papaliki and Tarpany in the front row. I think Papaliki is the only one that's a definite. I think we're going to have a fight out between, say, Tarpany, we've got Gula, and we've got Horsburgh as well. And potentially where whoever plays lock, there might be Sutton in there as well. So there's so much congestion. I've got Tarpany in at the moment. I reckon they'll give him the go to start the season. And then, so I don't think I want any of this at all. I think there's just too many players fighting for minutes. And you know what Ricky was like last year. And he was just cutting and chopping and happy to drop Papaliki even, which is their leader in the forward pack. So, personally, I'll be staying away.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Look, as you rightly point out, there's too many mouths to feed in that Raiders pack. And until we know the rotation, and I mean, they're talking about Young on one edge playing 80, but I'm not even convinced that happens when they've got players like CNK and others, looming around in that position. So, but the one I do like, as you mentioned, was Starling. I think he's got a very Supercoach friendly game. And I really like that Raiders pack. It's a big, strong, mobile pack. I like Fogarty in the halves there. And I think that that could see a lot more points going, through the middle off someone like a Starling. So, yeah, I agree with you, mate. If Starling gets the minutes or a starting position, I would be all over that myself. What about you, Brod? Anything in the Raiders that you like to start this season in Supercoach?
Like what's been mentioned before, we don't hope for injuries, but a couple of injuries to that pack, and then we come some relevant players with minutes. But again, just way too many players, and the hookers I'm not looking at. So unfortunately, again, live in Canberra, but I hate them as well. So
Chris, anything in the Raiders you like in the 9 or the front row for your Supercoach side?
Yeah, just going to keep a constant eye on Starling and seeing whether old Hodgson gets a mid-season trade to the Knights or someone like that. And if that happens, he'll become very relevant because he is quite a good PPM player and he's an attacking hooker. So got a lot of speed. So keep an eye out for him.
I think that Crocker and Hodgson have sort of stifled the Raiders from my perspective. I just think they've got better with Starling and, some of those backs there that I think those players need to be moved on. What about you, Laurie? Anything in that Raiders 9 or front row that you would have in your Supercoach side?
Yeah, not for round 1, no. Unless something changed where, as everyone's talking about, perhaps what has happened, Hodgson goes down injured, all of a sudden Starling comes very popular for a lot of people. But other than that, round 1, no. Not with Hodgson's there. All
right. We're going to move on to the Roosters, and that's you, Chris. Now, this side is a little prettier.
Yeah, probably not in these positions. They are quite the team. They're my pick for the minor premiership. So I'll just run through the hookers to start us off with. There's a couple. The first one's Connor Watson, who we got a taste of last year, who got to play some consistent minutes over a full season finally. So he was only playing relatively in the 13, 14 roles. So in 2021, he played across 24 games for 59 minutes a game, averaging 1 ppm at about 59 points per game. So there's some more relevant information I had to sort of dig up, which is back in 2019 when the last time he actually started at hooker. He had seven games for an average of about 73 points per game, and all of those games were 80-minute games. So if something happens with the hookers at the Roosters, as it often does, because Verrills is always likely to get injured, he could become quite a good player for us. But hopefully he sort of sits on the bench for a while and just rots away a little bit until his price gets around 250k, and then we can grab him once he becomes relevant in the starting nine. But yeah, until then, I wouldn't recommend it, as you can use an extra 60k to go to Damien Cook. So, there's no point. He's just going to be a bench player until something happens there with the injuries. The rest will be Verrills. Don't really like him. He's not super relevant, not a good, big PPM guy. You've got Freddie Lussick and Marshke, pretty much all plotters, so I wouldn't go near those guys. Let's go to the front row forwards with Lindsay Collins. He played 6 games last season, did his ACL, unfortunately. Also on the field, his minutes were a bit all over the place, as Robbo tends to do with his forwards. He played 62 minutes in the first game, 51 minutes, then 42 minutes, 44 and 41, and 37 across those games, which is a bit worrying for me, to be honest, considering all the hype around him. Although he did manage to get about a 1.27 ppm, so that's a little something. But yeah, huge concern with minutes. He is a bit of a worker, and he plays in a attacking juggernaut of a team with Cleary and Tedesco, and he's probably likely to get onto a few short balls and go over the line and get a few offloads away for a try. So yeah, don't sleep on him. He's at a price around 460k, so he might be a guy to go with. And plus, you never know. They've got a couple of old forwards in that pack that have been running for quite a few years, so he may get 60 minutes across the board. So you never know. Other than him, it's just basically JWH, TKO, and a Tony. They're probably like 50 average guys. A Tony, he's a bit of a plotter. So other than that, there's really not much going on at the Roosters. Not much excitement in hooker and front row, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of value in the Roosters in the front row or hooker position. So I'll go around quickly and check with everyone, but we'll try and move through these clubs that have got nothing Supercoach relevant, I think. The only one there is Watson, and I think he'll play a utility role. His talent is his own undoing, really. He'll probably start at 9, so if you've got him, don't get trapped by him starting at 9. That'll be a very short time role. Laurie, you think anything from 9 or front row you'd be looking at for the Roosters?
Yeah, no, not for round 1. Watson's a watch to see what his role is. No one really knows. I'm seeing some teams, they like Collins, but not for me. But yeah, there'll be no Roosters and no positions in my team.
I'm actually glad you mentioned Collins, and I don't know why he slipped my memory. So I had Collins last season. I actually really do like Collins. The only reason that I'm not touching Collins this season, he's at a really good price at around 400-ish K, and his work rate is incredible. My fear is that he's coming back from an injury. I'm not sure if it was an ACL, was it? It was an injury big enough to take him out for the season. What I like was the coach said last season that he was going to play him up into 60, 65 minutes. So if Collins does get a role that includes minutes of 60 or plus, I would seriously revisit the thought process on him based on points per dollar. Brode, anyone that you see in the Roosters in 9 or front row that you would start, mate?
Just again, obviously, we talked about last season. I jumped on Collins as well. If he stays injury-free and does get those minutes, I'll be on him. But yeah, he'll be the only front row or hooker that I look at the Roosters.
Dan?
Yeah, like you, I started with Collins last year, and I really like what I saw from him. I think he had a really Supercoach-friendly game. But yeah, like you said, the issue is the minutes. If their minutes do start creeping up, but I wouldn't even trust them either because they do often fluctuate. And definitely, yeah, I love Watson. I just a bit nervous about how many minutes he's going to get. I think he's got one of the best Supercoach friendly games out there, and I just don't. Yeah, I'm going to stay away, wait and see for sure.
And the other fear with Watson for me is that they're like on their edges, they got Stilly Tupanura and they got Angus, who are both 80-minute second rowers, which means that rotation is going to go through that middle. We know Victor Radley plays through the middle, Verrills plays at 9. So Jay, we know the positions there, and so he can only but rotate through that middle somewhere, possibly through lock and 9. So Watson will be one we'll keep an eye on for minutes. All right, so moving to the next club, guys, which is the Sharks, which is you, Brod.
Yeah, Sharks have a couple of players that I like. So obviously, I've liked McInnes ever since he got signed there. So after he had his couple of games at the 13 and was rotating around, you could see what he could do. So getting a second rower that could potentially play 70+ minutes in hooker. He's my hooker at the moment. Obviously, we'll watch and wait for the trials to see how that all goes out. And yeah, Brayley, I think will play, in the hooker and get 55, and McInnes will do the rest. So McInnes is the only one at hooker. And then front row, I think Braden Newelly will start. And 308K is nicely priced. But the worry is that Woods and Tolman are on the bench and they'll take his minutes away. And their other front rower, I think, will be Finucane. But at the moment, you can only get him in second row, and I don't think he's a Supercoach worthy player anyway. So, but Braden will be the one that I'll be watching with the trials to see how many minutes he does get, especially at that price.
Yeah, I like the Sharks with McInnes myself. I'm still a bit worried on. I think McInnes will start at 13, and like you just said, he'll move into that 9 position, and Brayley will come off. That I'm not sure of. It'll be interesting to watch how that unfolds in the trial. He's been in and out of my side. I've actually had him at second row because I have Grant at 9 and Randall, but I do like him, especially at his price point. He's definitely unders. That's my only fear is, again, coming back from stuff. What about you, Chris? Anything from the Sharks you like?
Yeah, I heard an interview with their coach. So he's basically saying that he's going to ease McInnes back in over the first 5 or 6 rounds. So I would not be going near him at all. So, just a word of warning. And also Jaden Beryl. He's a really good young kid, really just powerful young hooker, a lot of speed, can barrel over the line and get tries. So if something were to happen to their starting hooker, look out for this kid.
Yeah, well, interesting. One of the first things I do when Teamless Tuesday comes out is everybody flies through to see who the starting lineup is. I go straight to the bench because before I even look at what's on the field, I want to know what's on the bench so that I know how the field's going to rotate and look. So it's interesting. There's some young, exciting players coming up. There's also is it Frank Pele? Franklin Pele? I've read a bit about him. He's cheapie that could possibly get some minutes. So keep your eye on for him. He's available in the front row. So Franklin Pele, I think that's how you say it. Is that right?
That's the one.
What about you, Dan? Sharks?
Yeah, I'll be watching McInnes. I think end of last year, I was always all over him because I had him the year before. It was amazing. But yeah, I think there's too many unanswered questions just now about him. So I'll be waiting and seeing again. But yeah, I'll be looking at who gets those bench spots. I think that there could be a nice little cheapie, like you said, with Pele there. I'll be keeping an eye on that. There's a lot of cheapies around other teams around that similar price.
Yeah.
So I'll try to see and watch which one I reckon is going to get the most minutes.
It's interesting. The ones we've got coming up, there'll be a lot more Supercoach friendly stuff we're about to talk about. We'll get through one more side, and that's the Knights. Rod, if you can quickly go over them, and then we'll start moving to some of these more exciting sides.
What do you mean? Knights have got Randall.
Oh yeah, well that's right.
Who's going to be in?
Yeah.
I predict he'll be in 80% of teams at that price. We've all seen what he can do. I think he came out the first game, got the most tackles ever by a rookie. 60 odd tackles in the match.
6, wasn't it?
And he's got a very, very good Supercoach friendly game. I think he started hooker last round last year and got 87 points against the Bronx. So someone that I think is a must-have. And then the other ones, I don't see Kirk playing hooker at all. The word is that they're looking at putting him into the lock role, and obviously maybe might take some minutes to give Randall a rest, but not Supercoach worthy. And then you've probably got the Safidi brothers. So they're both there. Are you going to spend that money on one of those in a team that's not showing much? Probably not. So, and then I think the bench will take a fair bit of minutes with Clemmer and Co on there. So
I like the Saifidi boys. In my opinion, Daniel Saifidi is probably one of the best props in the game. Doesn't quite translate to Supercoach, but he has had some big scores in Supercoach. Jacob Saifidi, what was his price? Did you have that written down, Rod?
I think it was around the 480 mark.
Okay, it's a little bit more than I thought it might be because I don't mind Jacob Saifidi.
Sorry, Jacob's around 406k.
Right. Okay, thank you, Chris. All right, so I'll just quickly go around then. So now you've said something, Chris. So anything you like in that? Obviously, we're all going Randall. Anyone else you like from 9 or in the front row for the night?
Yeah, obviously Randall's in my team. In relation to front row forwards, I've had sort of been playing around with a team with Jacob Saifidi in it. I've gone against that now as I felt like Jai Arrow could be a better player. So playing on 80 minutes on an edge possibly. So I've basically gone against that. But keep an eye out for Jacob Saifidi. If he plays like between 50 and 60 minutes, he's a bit of a PPM monster. So, he was actually rated better than his brother while they were growing up. It was just when they got into the first grade is when Daniel started to dominate up there. And unfortunately, with a few injuries, Jacob hasn't gotten much of a go. So look out for him. He could be something this year.
What about you, Laurie?
Just same as everybody else. Randall, he's in my team. He's the only knight in my team. The Safidi brothers, they're both very talented, but they won't be my round one team at the moment unless they do something great in the trials that grabs me. But just Randall at the moment for me.
All right, we'll move on to the Eels, and that's you again, Dan. If you can read out the Eels, and there's a few things in there I don't mind myself.
Yeah, no, I really like the Eels forward pack this year. So I'll start with hooker. Obviously, Reed Mahoney there. I think, Reed Marnie, I think it's pronounced. Really like Marnie. Currently, he's in my team. I've been cutting and swapping it back and forth between Grant, Cook, and Marnie. I think I'm definitely picking one of those guys. I'm just whether I can hold the pin and bench Grant or take the points in the first game. So I think he's at 594, 600, which, I think he's priced about that a little bit lower for the draw he's got at the start of the season. The first 8 rounds are really good. So I think I'm leaning towards starting him just because of that attacking stats that he can pull up against those teams he's playing against. In the front row, we've got Reagan Campbell Gillard. I just think he's very much a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I think he's priced at what he can do when he's not going to be going up or down. And I got Junior Paulo there. So he's a bit of a meat and potato cross with rocks and diamonds, I think. Last year he started off really, really good and then just dropped off. He's at 487. So I'm going to stay away. I'm a bit nervous about how he was last year. And I won't forget the big one here is Azaya Papaliki. I think we can't forget Papaliki. He's 688 at the moment, which is quite expensive. I will be leaving him out. I think there's going to be a drop in minutes with him as well. I think they'll start him on the second row and they'll move him to the middle and they'll drop him for a few less minutes. If anyone started with him, I probably wouldn't begrudge you at all. I guess he's got that strong team, but I would actually judge the rest of your team because of the extra money you spend in the front row there. And obviously being a jewel is pretty handy as well, but it's just a bit too much money for me.
All right, I'll address a couple of things first, though. The Eels just signed Mitch Rain. I don't know what that means, but I also read a post today saying that Mahoney won't be playing 80 minutes. That hasn't been confirmed. It's just, you know, one of those Supercoach whispers we hear. But if Rain was to be on that bench with Reid Mahoney, that would make me afraid of him straight away. Reid's one I've actually been looking at myself. I've been switching between him and Grant and Brandon Smith. But Reid's the one I really like based on draw. I really love that forward pack. And I really like, if anyone remembers last season, Junior Paulo and Reid Mahoney just combined so many times at the start of the season and scored some really, got some coaches off to a really nice flying start. And on IPAP, I bought him last season at 442 in the second row. I mean, he's a second rower. If he was to play 80 minutes at second row on that left edge available in front row, he's definitely worth it down the track. He's not one that I'd be looking at now based on points per dollar. You know, that's sometimes players you need to earn. And at the start, we need to build our revenue up towards that kind of player. What about you, Brod? Anyone from the Eels you like?
Yeah, again, Mahoney, you know, he's been my team in and out. Yeah, so, but, you know, if that's the word that he won't be playing 80, I'm sure we'll cover off Cook and Co as well, but, you know, there's not a lot of hookers that look like they're going to play 80 this year, so
Yeah.
it's which one do you trust the most? So, and yeah, front row, if Papali gets a second row gig, I'll probably look at him in that front row spot, but not unless he's playing some big minutes.
Yeah. And what about you, Laurie? Anyone from the Parramatta side that you're starting in your Supercoach side?
Yeah, but not those positions. Marnie obviously is, you know, he's a great young hooker. Makes you wonder if they sign another hooker, it makes you wonder if his shoulder's no good or they're worried about his shoulder. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be starting in the front rows. I think it's Gillard. Is it Campbell, Gillard and Paulo as the front rowers? And Sean Lane might come on as a prop as well. He might play a bit of prop and back row, back and forwards. But yeah, I don't think I'll be starting any Eels players in the hooker or front row.
Yeah, they've got a big pack, but until we know the rotations again, we don't really know, do we?
No, big question marks here with the Eels, but definitely talented forward pack.
Yeah. And Chris, anyone from the front row or hooker position from the Eels you starting, mate?
Yeah, I was considering Reid Mahoney, but I think I'm probably going to go with Damien Cook in that position at the current time. But yeah, some interesting players in the front row. Paulo's in my never again list, so I won't be going there. And then you've got obviously High He's probably a little bit over for him to repeat those attacking stats he got last year. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me on the Eels. I'm not too interested.
All right, so we move to Manly, guys, and that's you, Laurie. So
okay, onto the front row. No big surprises. The first one is Martin Tapau. He's at 510k. Last 3 seasons, he's averaged the same. In 2019, he averaged 61.5. On 2020, 59.9, and last year 58.2. So they're all reasonably all about the same. So what you pay is what you get with Martin Tapau. But I believe it could be his last season in NRL. Like I'm hearing that he may go to Super League in 2023. So he might be out for a big year if he gets those big minutes again. The other prop I've got is Pasika. He's at 382. He averaged 43.6 last year. Bit down on his 2020 average of 47.5. Hooker, Lachlan Crocker. He had his best year so far. He was 2019 and averaged 21, and he was injured. I think he was injured most of the season. Then 2020, I think he got injured again a bit. He was 27.4, and last year averaged 46.4, so which is a big jump in his average. So yeah, I think he plays around the 60 minutes, I believe, something like that. Bench, I think Dylan Walker will be one. He'll come on and play his role as he did last year. He's at 389k. He averaged 44.4 last year, so not really Supercoach relevant. Who's the one I've got? They get the Buluma. Is it Buluma? They come to the Broncos. They come down. Yep. I really like him. I think he's come down to Manly for bigger minutes. He wasn't getting those minutes up at the Broncos. He's a very strong ball runner. and I think he'll get increased game time this year. It's just a matter of how many minutes he'll get. Kepi, he's 52k. He averaged 40.2 last year. I think he'll be in I think Kane Lawton.
Yeah.
He's second row hooker. So he might come on, but saying that as an injury now to one of the back rowers we all know about, Schuster, so that might change. He might get in the back row now. So but yeah, want to keep on. And there's Davey. Oh, no, he's a back row too. Josh Alloy, he's suspended now. I think to round 4. I believe Josh Alloy.
Round 4.
Yeah, so he's not available. So they're the only ones that are Supercoach relevant. I don't think I'll be starting any of them, to be honest. No. Except maybe that Bullimore, maybe, depending on his minutes. He's only 280k, and I think he's dual too. I think he's second row, front row, so he could come in handy.
It's a shame with the Manly, they've got that Fainu, was it? Incredible player in the middle there.
Yeah.
Shame that they've had to run with Lachlan Crocker, because I think Manly could have even gone on to win the premiership if they had a number 9 that was a little bit better in that position. Look, the only one that I like from there, and I'm not going to start though, is Martin Tapau. We all know what we get from Marty. He's a workhorse, he offloads, and I suspect that he'll probably play bigger minutes through that rotation now Schuster's gone down, because I think Lawton will move into that second row position, which could see Marty with an extra, 5 or 10 minutes. It was interesting when they had Aiden Fanua-Blake and Marty, because they had this pattern of where 1 week one would stay on and the other one went off, and he'd play bigger minutes that week, and then the next week it'd be Aiden Fanua-Blake. So it'd be interesting to see if they do that with Poseka and Martin. Marty Tapau, big Marty. So what about you, Chris? Anyone from Manly that you'd be starting in your starting side from 9 or front row, mate?
Yeah, it's with that injury to Josh Schuster, it's looking like it's a sort of battle between Carl Lawton and Andrew Davies for that spot. But if Carl Lawton does end up getting 80 on an edge, he put up some pretty good numbers last year, so look out for him.
Yeah, and he's available through the front row, isn't he?
No, it's just hooker or second row.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Hooker second row.
I didn't know much about Bullimore. It's a Queenslander. It's about all I knew.
No, I'm talking about Lawton.
Oh, Lawton. I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. Dan, anyone from Manly that you like in the front row or 9, mate?
Yeah, I really do. After watching Lawton last year, I thought he played really well. When he came off the bench, he actually his attack was really good. It looked really good. I kind of sparked him a little bit more. I'm really hoping that Bullimore gets that spot. Like you said earlier, that he's gone down there for extra minutes. I think that with Schuster gone, I think Bullimore might get that. And I really like what I see NRL aspect of that guy. He's actually a pretty good looking footy player. I think I told Tim last week, I said that I wouldn't be starting with Bullimore. I think everyone's crazy for it. But now that that's good news, or not good news, unfortunately, for Schuster, but there might be some minutes there for him now, which means it might help me bring down a cheapie and actually bolster up my halfback, which would be great.
It's interesting how one player's misfortune becomes another's fortune in rugby league, isn't it? As you said before, none of us want to see injuries in rugby league, but sometimes when they do, they can really open up the door. Another cheapie comes in, another cheapie gets a chance, and all they need is to play 3 or 4 of them games in a row. And if they do well enough, they can maybe hold that position. You know what I mean? Brod, anyone from there, Manly, mate, you're starting in the front row of the 9 position?
I'll be definitely watching their trials with some interest to see some rotations, but at the moment I haven't got anyone, but definitely some could creep in, so we'll see what happens.
All right, we're going to move on to the Storm. So I'll do this in 2 parts because the Storm does have a bit to talk about, in my opinion. Not so much through the front row, but obviously the 2 important ones are the 9s, and which is Brandon Smith and James Grant. I don't think we need to go into depth too much in with their stats. I'll put them up on the page. Well, I will say that he averaged 73.5 Grant last season from 13 games with a PPN of 125, which is really good from averaging of 59 minutes. And interestingly, his 2 biggest scores he got last season was 103 and 105 versus the Sharks. So he likes those sort of sides that defend well in the middle. His stats are quite phenomenal, with 6.5 points in tries, 9.2 in try assists, 27.4 in tackles, 4.9 tackle bust, 8.5 in line breaks, 10.5 in hit ups. So what I'm hoping is Grant, and we'll go around the room on Grant because he's a huge one, is I'm hoping that he starts round 2 on the field playing 80. We need to discuss, I guess, whether or not. So I'll talk about Brandon quickly too, so we can talk about both as we go around the room, which is Brandon Smith and Grant and Munster are both not playing round 1. So a lot of players are looking at starting one or the other, or even maybe 2 of those on their bench and then starting like a Randall on the field. So the other one is Brandon Smith, who's actually who last season played the 9 position. He averaged 68 and he's, I don't know, I haven't written down his minutes for some reason, but he's priced at 596 and his average, he played 60 minutes last season with a point PM of 1.13. So they both got incredible stats. They're in the ceiling side. What's interesting is like last season, Brandon Smith started, then Grant came on. I think this season that Grant's going to start at 9 and Brandon Smith's going to start at lock and rotate with Nas. So I own Grant at the moment. I don't have Smith. I'll go around the room and get some feedback. Laurie, Grant or Smith in your starting side, mate?
No, not at the moment. But saying that, I haven't decided because there's 2 ways you look at it. Like you can start with Grant, have him on your bench, and start and just go with Randall, and go. And if you can score pretty well round 1, and get away with it, then you get that. You set that trade next round, so you're in a good position. And then there's the other way to look at it. Do you want to leave that many cash on the bench for round 1 and look for more and have to get more points? So yeah, I'm still divided on that. Which way to go with that? There's a bit of value each way on that. But yeah, I'm 50-50 to start with Grant or bring him in once I know exactly what his role's going to be in round 2 and burn the trade then. But yeah, I'm on the sideline with that one yet.
Yeah, and at his price point at 644, you can go down to someone like a Reed Mahoney or a Cook, and you actually get a fair bit of coin back into your side. So, you know, I've been looking. There's been many times where I've robbed to pay, you know, in different positions, and Grant's the one that I do it from back and forth. But he's just has such an upside for me in a ceiling side that I just keep going back to Grant. I'd love it if I had Smith, Grant, and Munster personally, but that's just me. But I've only got the one at the moment. What about you, Brod? Any of those 3 in your starting side at the moment, or in your team?
Not my team at the moment, but again, Grant's been in and out. Probably the most with Mahoney. So look, I'll probably start with Grant, to be honest, and play him from the bench. Just have that Queenslander feel to my team. So, but yeah, and then Cheese isn't there yet, but we'll see what happens. So, but yeah, definitely Grant.
What about you, Dan? Either Grant or Smith in your starting side?
I'm not as hopeful on Smith as a lot of people are. I'm definitely on to Grant. I literally just did a live trade and just moved Mahoney to Grant. After what Brod said earlier, it might be a struggle to get any 80-minute hookers this year. So I just thought in my head just then, the best policy is, why don't you just go to the guy that didn't play 80 last year and still got the best average? You know what I mean? So if he gets 80, even better. So I think I'm hooked and started with him. I think we're blessed also having someone like Randall, who's a base stat hooker, who will probably rack up about 45 tackles, give us a safe enough score. I think we're very lucky. So I think it's almost, I don't want to say obvious, but I think it's an obvious choice now that I've seen the light.
Yeah, I've definitely got Randall in my side, and the other one's Grant. But the one I keep switching back and forth for this Cook. But there was rumours today, but we'll get to Cook as well. So what about you, Chris? You're starting either Grant or Smith in your side?
Yeah, I'm kind of toying between Grant and Cook. Not too sure where to go because I think Cook can go quite big against the Broncos in round 1. So do I go with that and get a good start? I think I might be sort of leaning towards Cook. And I'm not convinced by all the hype that Grant is going to be that guy that comes in and plays like 70 to 80 minutes this year. Because to be perfectly honest, the Storm, they had an incredible run of wins, probably the biggest in history. And literally, they used that system where it was Brandon Smith starting, Grant coming off the bench, and that was their bread and butter. So I don't see why they're going to go away from that. I know they've lost a few forwards, but it's not as clear cut to me as it is to everyone else. I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but I think there could be some issues there. But Grant seems to score well, whether he's playing 60 minutes or 45. So
the answer to that question for me is to my thinking is that you've lost Finucane, you've lost Kamika. There's still questions around Nas. So that's a lot of experience out of your middle. And then you've got Jesse Bromwich, who's tiring. You've got 2 80-minute edges with Kafusi and K-Brom. So I do see big minutes from Grant. Not so much Brandon Smith. I still think he'll play 60 to 65 minutes. And I think he'll move through that rotation in the 13. That the trials might answer some of those questions for us. And, I do think points per dollar that Grant isn't right. I mean, I keep looking at it and thinking points per dollar, Cook and Reid offer better value on a money scale, but it just looks so pretty in my side. And sometimes there's just players that you really like, and he's one that I warm to.
Well, look, you can definitely cover him with Randall, so you can't go wrong if you wanted to take a punt on him. So everyone else is, why not?
Yeah, that's right. Randall was the one that made that possible, actually. That Randall coming in was the one that made it possible to up my player to him, which is good. So I'll go through the forward. So we know that Jesse Bromwich and Welsh will start through the front row. I like Welsh, and he's another one I think that you could watch with interest. His minutes, I think, will also increase this year. He's a workhorse. He offloads. He's a tackle bot. And I don't know if I'd start with him, but I'd be interested to watch what role he plays. And the other forwards that there's Eisenhower, Wishart, and I believe in one out, which is Moroa, Tepo Moroa, and Nace, Nelson Salasoma, however you say his name. So Nas has got his vaccination. Is that correct? I think he's got his vaccination. And so he will be playing. So that might hurt Tepo Moroa, who may start at lock in the first game, but then, what role he plays from there. So I'll go to you, Brod. Any of those forwards, including Moroa, you're interested in your side?
Yeah, Tavanga Moroa is on my bench at the moment. Not sold on him, but obviously just there to lock down a cheapy place. We'll see with the drafts. The trials. But yeah, Tavanga Moroa is probably the only one that I'm looking at, just at that cheapy range. So
I've seen a lot of sides online that have Howarth as well. And I mean, Howarth is a good player, but I don't see it. I don't see where he fits into the equation. But it'll be interesting to see Team Left Tuesday. Dan, any of the you got Moroa on your side or any other forwards from Storm?
Yeah, well, I got Tapuai Moroa on my side. I know you mentioned before, but he might start at lock at the start, obviously the first game. And his minutes will definitely be a bit more because even though Nas is there, you're still going to have, Kamika's out. So I still think there's more minutes there available. He's going to be a very slow burn. It's obvious. He's only there. If it was an ideal world, we wouldn't have him because we wouldn't need him. The other one with you mentioned Howarth. So obviously this young gun, they've actually paid a lot of money with this guy. Melbourne don't do that. They don't do that at all. So I'm hearing a few words from a few sources that they might start blooding him in the season, not at the start, but around the centres, potentially, to give him a bit of a run, just to get a taste of NRL. It's, what Melbourne are like. They'll have to blood him and give him a few extra minutes to just get him ready. They don't just go, give the guy the ball and just say, now do it. They got to prepare everyone. So I think a lot of people like to start with enough. I won't be this year. But if I was, it'd be starting with enough that's going to get a run later on in the year, and he might be one of them.
Yeah, I heard they signed into a 5-year contract or something, and on 1.2 million. So, and it's right. The Storm don't start players. They don't just throw them in the deep end. They kind of get them used to their systems and slowly flood them from the bench. So, but yeah, how the fact that the Storm are showing that interest says enough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So as I said, I don't see much from the Storm. So the next side that we have in line, I'm sorry guys, is the Rabbits. Laurie, your side, mate.
Yeah, the mighty Rabbitohs. So we'll start with the second row. I have Keon Kalamatangi as brainers at starting. He's currently 430k. He debuted last year. He only averaged 34. And not last year, 2020 he debuted and he averaged 34. In 2021, he averaged 60.5, a big jump. He's a great player, runs great lines, and he runs off Cody really, really well. The other back rower I have in there is Gyro. He's dual, front row and second row, which is very handy. He averaged last year 52.2, which is a little bit down on what he done the year before, but nearly all those scores are off the bench. So that's pretty good for a bench player. And he's starting maybe 80 minutes. There's a lot to like about him. I've noticed his ownership has increased week by week, the last few weeks. Actually, we're doing front rowers, aren't we? So I'll skip the second row there. But yeah, front rowers. Sorry, boys. The front row, I've got Junior Totola. All right, he's 384K. He's averaged pretty much the same the last 3 years. Last year was 43.8. The other front rower, I expect it to be Mark Nichols again. His minutes aren't big, but he does his role. He's 381K. He averaged 43.5 last year. Hooker, obviously, is Damien Cook. He's 575K. His average was down last year to 65.7. I also believe, like many, that that'll increase this year. I think Jason Dimitri will let him play his own game a bit more now, a bit more running game. So we should see more of those attacking stats come back a bit. A lot of them stats, those points from last year were base, not so much attacking. So I think we'll see a better Cook this year and more senior role too. Now Reynolds is gone. And on the bench, okay, I've got Tom Burgess, 449K. He averaged 51.2. So what the price you get is what you get with him. The other one, I think, from Burgess, Liam Knight. He's still recovering from that not bad head knock last year. He's still not doing full training at the moment, so he may not start round one. He got Hatham Saleh. I think he's dual. I might be wrong, but I think he might be a front row, second row as well. I'm pretty sure he's only 331 now. He was exceptional last year. Before the finals, until he got an injury. He was really good. So we missed him in the finals. And okay, sorry. And that one is Jacob Host. He's there for 4K. I think either him or Saleh, one of them missed the bench spot. Was that them too? But I think Saleh might beat him this year in the bench. And I think Sevilla Havili from the Raiders have joined South. Depending who their opponent is each week, I think him and Taff might rotate on that utility role. If they want to go big with a big pack against a big 4-pack, I think Havili might get that role because he can play lock or hooker. And for young bloke, you keep an eye out for that team is Davy Maoli. He's a young local junior. The club have massive raps on him. He's only 205K. And he's one to watch out for this year. His minutes will increase. And the coach has already said that recently as well. That's about it, really.
Okay, so for me, there's only 2 players in there that are Supercoach relevant that are in the front row and hooker position. I think that obviously Gyro, even though he's playing at second row, we can talk about him at front row because he's available in that position. And because we're talking about it for Supercoach. And I actually have Gyro at the moment, but he'd need to start on that left edge for me at the Bunnies. I think he's ideal because he's dual. He can play second row and front row. Yeah. And he's around the 400K or just over mark. So he can make money as well. An 80-minute player on an edge playing in the front row. What more can you ask? It could be last year's iPad. So I really like that one. Cook, there's some rumours around that Havili will come off the bench for him or Tafe and take some minutes. I don't know how true that is. I hope it's not, but I definitely like Cook. With Walker out of the with A-Ray out of the side, I think that it changes him from a delivery man to more of a running player. So I hope that you're right on that. Cook's the one that I'm struggling not to have. It's between Cook and Grant are the 2 that I keep coming down. So I'll go to you, Dan. Anyone in that Bunny side you like, including Cook and Arrow?
Yeah, I like the same as you. I keep rotating between the top 3 hookers. So Cook's been there. Cook was there pretty much the whole season until about the last 2 weeks. I've been changing it again. But one thing that I am a bit wary of is I know Bennett. Everyone knows Bennett's a bit of a coach killer, and Dimitrios has been under him for a very long time. Yeah. I'm not sure whether he's going to go the same kind of mold as Bennett, and that's why I'm a bit nervous about that Cook news. I think they're potentially it might be just rumours, but I wouldn't put it past Bennett's apprentice as to do that to us, which would be a bit hurtful. But yeah, I do love Jai Arrow. I got him in my team at the moment. I actually had another player there. He's in my second row at the moment on the bench because I've got a couple other big ones there. But yeah, I definitely love Jai Arrow. We know what he can do with the Titans. He did pretty well with the Titans there, and if he gets some more minutes, he's a worker. Even last year, he showed some glimpses of great. He's old style kind of just rough and tumble football, and it was always bloody good to see. So, except when I was playing the Panthers, but really, really enjoy what kind of game he brings. I'm just hoping he can bring that kind of Titan style football back to Rabbitohs.
Yeah, I like them both, mate. What about you, Brod? You interested in anyone in the hooker position or front row position for your Supercoach side?
There's Arrow. Obviously, it all comes down to that trial to see where they put these players.
Yep.
I haven't had Cook in any of my teams. I didn't like what I saw last year. And then obviously a change of coach, I think is a big thing. So I want to see those trials to see what kind of football they do play, where these players do come into it. So,
and Chris,
last me a couple of weeks.
Oh, sorry, Brod. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's right. After we see them trials, I think they'll answer a lot more questions. What about you, Chris? Anything in the bunnies you like in the front row or hooker position for your Supercoach side?
Yeah, I've currently got Jai Arrow in the front row, along with Damien Cook at hooker. I heard that rumor, but that rumor came from the rugby league guru on the Bloke in a Bar podcast, so I wouldn't put too much faith in that. Damien Cook's been playing close to 80 minutes for almost 3 or 4 years now, so I don't see that changing, especially with the added responsibility he'll have this season without Adam Reynolds. So yeah, I'm gonna play him. I think he's gonna score well. I think he's gonna have more responsibility. He'll definitely have to run more to create more things for them because the new halfback's going to be under the pump. So yeah, big season for him, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think with A-Ray out, you got those 5 players: Jai Arrow, Murray, Cook, Latrell Mitchell, and Walker. That's pretty much their senior team. So I expect Cook. Well, I am expecting Cook to play 80 up until I heard that news. And if he does, I think that Cook's the other one that I really would look at. So I'll move on now to the Warriors, Dan.
Yeah, a little bit to talk about here, not too much. But at hooker, we've got, we'll start with Egan. He's at 429, 200. When he was at the Panthers, a young little gun there, I really liked him. But he seemed to have lost that little out of dummy half. I feel as though, he used to be that really quick guy at dummy half, and I think he's lost it at the Warriors. So I'll be staying away. I won't even touch him for draft. I think he's irrelevant. Over on the bench, we've got Tavanga, who I love that guy. I think he's he's a really great player, and it's just unfortunate he keeps getting put on the bench. I reckon he could play 80 minutes at lock and make 80 tackles, which he already has proven in the past. So it's just a bit of unfortunate there. In the front row, I got AFB at 505,000, which I think is actually a pretty good price for AFB. We know what he can do. He can get a couple of hundreds. He has that TPJ style where he can have that pretty solid base, but actually had some good attack as well. So I actually like AFB. And in round 1, they're probably going to start with Bunty Afoa on the bench there. On the field there, while Lodge is suspended for round 1. So if anyone does see Bunty there at 321, don't start licking your lips because it's just not going to be very long. Lodge has got that, and Lodge is at 498, 300, which I also actually really like that price. Lodge is just that meat and potatoes kind of player. He'll just plod along, make some meters, and every now and then he'll get that offload out and actually give you some extra points. So I'm not starting with any of them. I think there's too much risk there. There's a lot of good forwards at the Warriors. There's actually one I reckon I like the look of, and that's young Tene. He's at 287. I think he's actually playing in the Maori All-Stars as well, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure. I think we've actually seen bits and pieces of him. He's actually a pretty good little player. My fear is that Bunty goes to the bench when Lodge comes back and Penne may drop off. So that's the only fear that I have, unless Bunty drops out altogether. So, so I'm going to probably avoid Penne for now, but definitely keep an eye on him. A lot of our teams out there actually have him there all year long. And I like to agree with that, but I'm just not too hopeful just yet.
Yeah, I think the only one that's really Supercoach relevant was Aidan Fanua-Blake. At his price point, he's definitely one I like. I just think that there's better value at the moment when talking about players like Tavita Pangai Jr., Haas, and Arrow and Stefano. So I'll move on, unless I'll just quickly go around the room and ask the boys. Brian, anyone from the Warriors?
Aidan Fanua-Blake I've looked at, but like you said, those other four are probably in front of him. So unless I need to save some money and downgrade Haas for a little bit, then
Chris?
I actually disagree with that starting lineup. I think that Penne will actually start with AFB. I think Bunty's really an impact guy. I don't think he's going to be starting anytime soon. And I think they've actually paid quite a bit of money for Penne, so I think he may in fact be up front starting with AFB when midway through the season at some point, because he is a very good player. With AFB, I think he's an elite player. He's seriously underpriced. I think he's a potential 70 average player. And last year when he came back off of that injury, he was rolling out 70s just for fun. So like he gets a lot of good base stats, and he has that attack in him as well, and he can score a try. So and with SJ there, don't sleep on him. He'll be a very good player. He's currently in my side. So looking forward to it.
I had Aidan Fanua-Blake last season, and I wasn't unhappy with him, apart from the time he went out with the injury and stuff or whatever it was he went out for. And what about you, Laurie? Anyone from the Warriors that you're starting in your Supercoach side in the front row or hooker position?
Yeah, there's no one from the Warriors in my team currently. As everybody else says, Fanua-Blake, he was in my team last year too, Glen, and he's a great player. But at 505k, I see more value in like Arrow and Stefano. Like you can see a bit of coin there too.
Yeah.
And to Tavanga Pangai Jr. He paid more for him, but it is due as well. So yeah. But not saying he won't be my team at all next year. It might be a time where I get injuries or after might bring him in. But yeah, at this stage, pending trials, he's not in my team for round one.
Yeah, it'd be one I'd be looking at for the buy round possibly, but I don't think it's one based on points per dollar and revenue where we're trying to make money early that he makes a spot. So we'll move away from the Warriors and we'll move on to the last side, which is the Penrith Panthers. And so obviously Apu Carousel's their number 9 and Mitch Kenny will come through the bench. I actually don't mind Apu Carousel as a player. I owned him the year before last in Supercoach, but that was based more on price. I think he's priced at the moment at his value, which means I don't think there's much money to be made from him, which is $479, $500. You could argue he's $550 player, so maybe there's 70, 80, 90K that could be made from him. He averaged 68 minutes last season with a point PM of 0.8. So it's 39 tackles usually a game, and as I said, averages 68 minutes. He's currently in 1%, or is it 7% of Supercoach sides? So there are people looking at him. The other thing about Carousel is he doesn't mind an injury. He goes down quite often, and I don't, trades are valuable or gold in Supercoach, and you don't want to be in and outing players, especially early when you're trying to build. There's nothing more frustrating when you have a set plan to build early in Supercoach and suddenly you're replacing players, because what it does is it takes away from what you want to do because you're forced to do what you don't, other trades. In the front row position, so there's obviously, so the other one was Mitch Kenny in the hooker role. The only 3 that I would even talk about would be James Fisher-Harris, who has lost his dual player status, and so that for me makes him less enticing. He played 62 minutes through the front row, and from 22 games last year, he averaged 62, as I said. Yeah, he's averaging only 53 minutes, but his PPM's 1.18. So if he was to get more minutes on the field, then James Fisher-Harris would be interesting. Again, one I might look at through the buy period. The other 2 are Leota and Linu. I think Leota will start, but he's priced at his point, and Linu doesn't get enough minutes to really be worthy. The bench, you're looking at players like Eisenhealth, Linu, I didn't really sort of make up their bench, to be fair. They had May last season playing, so they play with a second rower, centre wing, and then 2 forwards. So that says to me, if they do that again, that James Fisher-Harris again may be worth at least looking at. But for me, I don't see anything Supercoach relevant that I want to start with in the front row or hooker position. Rod?
No, I'm not on any of the Panthers forwards at the moment. It's more their backline that I like. So I'll talk more about the players I like in the coming episodes. So
Nice. Dan, anyone in 9 or the front row position you're looking at from the Panthers, bro?
Not really. The only thing I'll make a point of is the bench that I've got actually has Kenny.
Yeah.
It has we've got Spencer Lenu, Sorensen, and Tylan May. And this is what I'm hearing everywhere. They're going to have a hooker and a centre on the bench, which tells me that there actually might be an increase in minutes because those forwards do have big motors. I'm not sure how much I'm actually believing this, but they did do it when Crichton was the up-and-comer. They did start with Crichton on the bench as well as a utility. So, I definitely watch out for those minutes. I reckon there might be an increased minutes for the forwards. I don't think it matters with Leota, but it might actually help with James Fisher-Harris. So definitely watch. Yeah,
and even Spencer Linu, if he was to get more minutes, his PPM and his work rate's incredible. He just doesn't get the minutes. Mm-hmm. But, they did actually end the season playing that last year. And the rumours are either Targo or Tyler May gets that bench spot, which just for the record, we'll get to that when we cover centre wings, but don't touch either if they're in that position because, the last thing you want is a centre winger on your bench playing 15 minutes in a team. So that's the end of all the actual front rowers and hookers, guys. I'll discuss with our pod how we'll go about it in future. I think it might even be better if we just go through and discuss the actual Supercoach relevant players per position. We'll discuss that as a pod. But before we end, I've got a couple of questions from some of our viewers. So I'll ask that quickly. So the first question I've got is from Cole Bennett, and he said, guys, I'm thinking about starting with Valentine Homes as a pod. What do you think? I'll go to you first, Dan. What do you think of Homes?
Well, he's got some talent. If he's in the centre, I'm definitely staying away. No, I don't think he gets that. He's one of the best wingers in the game on his day. He'll finish a lot of tries. I just don't. I think there's way more options out there at similar or cheaper price points that will outscore him. So the whole point of a pod is to have that point of difference and score more points for you. I don't see him being that guy.
No, I agree. His relevance to me is if he was goal kicking at fullback, if he gets that centre wing position in Supercoach and he was to start at fullback, but it won't be for though. And but if he gets goal kicking by any chance, then he would become more relevant. But he's definitely a no for me. Also, what about you, Brod Holmes?
First off, Glen, the Cowboys have to score tries for him to kick goals, don't they? So, it's a definite. Never looked at him. I'll pick him up in the draft if he's, round 10 or 11, but that'd be it.
Yeah, he's definitely a draft option. What about you, Laurie? Would you touch Holmes in your starting side?
No, definitely not. Not just looking at his prices then, $559K. But if he was playing fullback, completely different. But yeah, I think he'll lose money. I think he'll just leave cash that away. I hope I'm wrong for Cowboys fans. I hope he does do well, but I just see him dropping in price.
Yeah, you really want to look at backs in ceiling clubs too, like clubs like that aren't ceiling clubs. They just poison. You might get 1 or 2 games here and there on matchup, but overall they'll just hurt you. And Chris, would you touch Valentine Homes in your starting side, bro?
No, I wouldn't go near any of the guys in a team that's going to come last. You've just got to. I think he's around 550K or something. So you could take a punt on a guy like Daniel Tupou. You could take a punt on a Tessie New, who's a fullback. So there's plenty of guys around that price range that you could take a punt on. I would definitely go nowhere near Homes this season.
Yeah, when we cover centre wings, there are actually some interesting pods out there. And like Tessie New, you touched on, Sloan. There's a couple out there at better price points in sides that I think can score points, although I just touched on the Broncos and Dragons. So I'm sorry. But that I do see points in the Broncos, not so much the Dragons. So there's one more question from our viewers, and it's Fred Corbett, and he said, thoughts on starting Grant Munster on the Pine, and he said, I know it makes my side look dubious, and especially in the centre wing position, but round 2, my side looks really strong. Would you start with Grant and Munster on the Pine? Brode.
Oh, look, it's an option that I'm looking at. Definitely, that spine of Melbourne is huge. And if you want to take a week's points that you're going to miss out on 50 or 60, then you easily could. Yeah.
And that's a valid point from you, Brad. I arguably the best spine in the competition at the moment would be that Hughes, Munster, Pappenhausen and Grant. So yeah, it's a strategy I looked at myself. Mine was going to be Munster and Grant. What about you, Dan? Is it something that you've entertained or would do?
Yeah, well, I'll go with 2 points. So if you're a head-to-head player, it is the obvious choice because you're going to have the head start on everyone with extra trades, and you don't even start playing any opponents until I think it's round 3. I think has it changed this year? Is it round 2 now? We're moving forward. But either way, and the other thing I like is, for example, you've got a lot of dual halves in your team, like we mentioned before, with having Grant on the bench, and because you got Randall, you can utilize. For example, if you had, say, an Ilias, you've also got Hastings, so you could potentially start. I actually like Hastings, so you could potentially start Hastings over Munster, have Ilias at halfback, and then move them back over in round 2, and then you're already no trades made. You've got Munster and Grant. I really like the idea.
Yeah. All right, Chris.
Yeah, I've toyed with doing it myself. Look, yeah, I think the main thing that you can get out of that is knowing that especially those 2 guys, Ilias and the halfback over at the Tiger, the 5 out of the Tigers, that the Tigers are actually playing against a very weakened Storm side. So he could have a field day considering he's got goal kicking. So you could easily slot him in for Munster. Plus you've got Randall as well, who's going to be taking up that backup spot. So you could slide him in, and he's going to be making so many tackles this year because they're going to be so bad. So
So a couple of points. Sorry, Chris.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of points I'd like to point out on that. Firstly, if you're a head-to-head player, as Ray pointed out, I think that's a good strategy. I think you're an overall player. There's money to be made in the 5'8" spot. So it's a little different for me as an overall player. I see money that can be made in 2 spots in the 5'8" spot, but it's definitely a strategy I looked at. The other thing, I was going to say something else, but then it slipped my mind. But so I guess that'll do. All right, guys. That'll do it for us tonight, eh?
I just want to call out SUPERCOACH Championship rings, which are throwing out another ring, as you can see with Dan. So they're throwing a ring again this year with the $100 head-to-head for prize for our overall, which I think Glen has our number for.
Okay, yeah, all right. For our overall, sorry guys, yeah, I do have it written down here. Excuse me for a second while I find it now. I actually forgot to do that.
So while you're looking for that, can I just do a quick shout out? While you're looking for that, can I just do a quick shout out? Because this gentleman's been involved in SC SuperCoach since the beginning, and he runs NRL SuperCoachStats.com. It's a free service. You can get stats on anything, anyone, and he does it for nothing out of the goodness of his heart. So if you go by that website, they've got a little donation tab. So feel free to throw in some money because mate, he has been just putting out an amazing resource for a long amount of time.
So what I was going to finish on was I actually was going to cover the shout outs, and NRL Stats was one that I was going to mention. Just before I do the shout outs, 2 things. One is Brode runs the cash comp. So if you're into cash comps and you want to have a crack, contact Brode on our Facebook page. Secondly is Dan, can you just quickly tell them about the platforms that we'll have this on in future?
Yeah, so started uploading this to YouTube. So this will be uploaded tonight on YouTube. If you don't want to see our ugly faces, feel free to jump onto Spotify. It'll be uploaded ready to go tomorrow. Make sure you jump on there and follow us on Spotify, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, guys. Hit the notification button. That way you can get some updates whenever we post a new video. We'll post every Wednesday, so you'll get to see us more often.
Okay, so secondly, I'll just name our 922-904. That's our Tragics overall comp. If you come first in that, you get $100 free entry into a cash prize next year and win one of those rings. And the shout outs I'd like to give to some of the other groups and pages. So NRL 360, Supercoach 360, who do their podcast on Tuesday nights, who I've done a bit of stuff with and writing for, which you'll see coming up. Also Turbo Hammies Cup, Dual Position Podcast. I'm always terrible at remembering them all. Our Supercoach Playbook, and who else have I left out, guys? Someone else want to throw something out?
Supercoach Champions.
Yeah, Dual Position Podcast, Champions. Bro, who'd you say?
And the Draft Boys.
And the Draft, yeah, Big Jam, mate. A beautiful bunch of blokes, mate. I really enjoyed talking to them. I jumped onto one of their pods and they really covered the draft stuff. So all these guys, we've got the community we have out there in Supercoach is fantastic. So get involved, and on our page, you'll see it forever. We post everyone's pods, everyone's pages, and it's all about check out what everyone else is doing, because everyone has their different perspectives. And if you listen to every different person, you gather a bit of information here and there, and you might grab something that just might be the goal for your side. So good night, guys. And we'll see you all next week, where we're going to talk about